I'm pretty confident from an outsider that the preseason games are not happening. Where do you stand?
I'm pretty confident that the preseason games are also not happening. Not thrilled about it, I'll admit, but I'm pretty confident that's the way it's going to go. I understand it. You know, we've talked about this for a few months. If it came to this point, would this benefit the 49ers or not? Which teams would it benefit? I would say yes. This would it benefit them or just not hurt them in the way it would hurt other teams? But either way, they would be on the side of the line of teams that could handle no preseason games better than most.
Yeah, to me, I would. There's a small, like it doesn't benefit the Patriots, right? I mean, and they got Bill Belichick.
I would say it actively hurts the Patriots.
I would say it actively hurts the Patriots as well. I would say there are like two teams that I would say 100% benefits. That would be the Chiefs, who return 20 of 22 starters and have the best quarterback in the league. I would say it benefits them. And I would say the Ravens, the majority of their team, young guys on the roster the last several years, they run a unique offense. All those guys are returning. Those two teams have a leg up. The 49ers, they benefit from one thing, no coaching turnover. Now, they had, I think, Woods, the DB coach, went to the Browns, became their defensive coordinator. When I say no coaching turnover, I talk coordinators, right? That's what I think of. Mm-hmm. Their offensive play caller, not changed. His two little minions haven't get plucked yet. Robert Saleh didn't get a head coaching job. Hightower, special teams coach, has not changed. Where I throw the curveball in, they have two important players that listen, your first round picks, wouldn't you say, whether you're replacing a veteran guy or you're just an addition, always pressure on that guy. But I think in their instance, when their first rounder is replacing, what would you say, Buckner, top 6 or 7 player on their team last year, on a team that was 15-3 heading into the Super Bowl?
By the time Emmanuel Sanders has worked his way in, you'd go quarterback, tight end,
Bosa.
Sherman he's right there with him. Yeah, I mean he is in that. Yeah, I mean top 5.
Team captain spoke at every press conference. I mean they asked a lot of the guy.
Yep.
So Javon Kinlaw, who you just Google a picture of him, you're like, is that guy the biggest human on the football field? He's enormous. Like he looks like you want him to look. He played in the SEC, and one thing everyone I've talked to in the league, and you just go YouTube some of his highlights. He hung his hat on. He played the best against the best competition because he played on a team that didn't make a bowl game. So you go South Carolina. Luckily, they play Georgia, they play Clemson, they play Florida. Like you put on their big games. That's where John Lynch and people in the league go, well, he played the best teams. He has it in him, and but he's got to do it now on the NFL level. That they're just, to me, no offseason training camp's going to be a lot different. And Brandon Ayuk, just one, Debo's hurt, right? So you just go, well, Debo is not going to be anywhere around during training camp in terms of beside the training room. Just because my buddy Michael Madsen, who broke his foot, Jones fracture, boot for a month, crutches for a month. Wow. So you just do the math.
How long till he was back on the field?
He said he was selling alarms about 3 months in. But
that's a long absence.
Yeah, it's something to keep an eye on. I that to me is there, like Trent Williams. He knows I don't worry about him at all. I just view those 2 first rounders for a team that had Super Bowl hopes. Like you're going to depend on. Like one of the things last year with the Patriots was they didn't get that much out of N'Keal Harry, and it hurt them. Right? He missed 8 games. He came back. And it was like their offense sucks. Their offense sucks. Well, they just drafted a guy in the first round, right? So when you draft a guy in the first round and you depend on that player offensively or defensively, you can't really avoid that guy impacting your team. Because if he doesn't, you usually are negatively impacted, right?
Right.
Like if the Chiefs, who if they take an offensive skill guy, are they really depending on him that much? Like I can never say his name right. Something Solaire, the little running back.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah, Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Helaire.
From LSU.
Yeah.
If he's good for them, it'll be great. But if I tell you, he's just okay, you'd be like, yeah, the Chiefs are still going to be really good on offense, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, the bar, right, like what is good enough for them is going to be lower than what's good enough for Brandon Ayuk for the 49ers. Like he's got to be better than Clyde Edwards-Helaire is for the Chiefs.
Yeah. So I think there's tangible pressure on these guys when it's clear practice, just at least reading rap sheets kind of break down and the no preseason games. Is it fair to say it's probably more like a fall OTAs meets a little training camp than just a true quote unquote training camp?
Yeah, I think so. But this is where I would go back to, and we spent a lot of time probably early lockdown talking about Super Bowl hangover type stuff. And my opinion was and remains that they are, ideally you would have won the Super Bowl, but they're in as good a position as you could be otherwise because they played in the Super Bowl, which should make you feel like gives you confidence that you have what it takes. They led until late in the Super Bowl against one of the all-time great offenses. And yet they lost the game, so they don't walk away with the satisfaction of having won the game, which sends you into an offseason knowing you are this close and you've got to put in the extra, just little bit. I think it's inspiring to feel as close as they feel and believe in themselves, like, hey, we know we have what it takes to win the Super Bowl. So maybe, does that mean their players had just a little extra when they were asked to work on their own, a little extra push on the bench, a little extra push on the treadmill, whatever? I don't know. But I do still think all of that stuff that you should get from almost getting to the mountaintop, being inspired by being that close, I think this team will still receive the benefits of that, even as some of the players are new. I mean, we're talking about two key positions being filled by rookies, but
and Trent Williams,
there's something to that.
Is new.
But Trent's new. He doesn't have the Super Bowl loss, but he does have something to prove, right?
Well, to me, I think he's only made the playoffs one time in his career, right? So, I mean, just part of it is just you want to win, right? He's been a part of a loser. I think the other thing is when you look back at the Seattle team, now it wasn't a hangover in the sense because they won the Super Bowl, but they got back the next year. I do think it speaks to the culture of the type players you have on your team. Like, why did the Patriots get back every year? Why were the Colts teams all those years, right, with Peyton always in like the championship game? If you draft and kind of construct the team with the right type players, win or lose the last game you play, whether it's the AFC or NFC championship game. Because I think we often use the Super Bowl, but wouldn't the Chiefs' loss against the Patriots 2 years ago be a good example?
Yeah.
Like, I think you can use the championship games as well as the Super Bowl of like, motherfucker, we were just right there. We were the best team in the league.
I think there's the only difference is, are you a team that is opening its window, or are you a team that just lost and your window's closing and it takes the wind out of your sails? The Chiefs were clearly a team opening its window. The Niners are clearly a team with a wide open. Yeah, they feel like we just slammed this window open. Hell, we should have won the thing. But yes, I think it's a good example.
Do you think it makes it easier? Because one of the knocks, and we've talked about this the last couple of weeks with just different sports, but specifically football, because money's hard to come by. Like we talked about it with the NBA. Like LeBron doesn't get like finals hangovers. He's just the best player and he just goes to the finals, right? They're used to having huge money and suites and living like fucking kings. Baseball kind of too, and it's just harder, the randomness of the sport. In football, you usually win. Some of your free agents get paid. You might pay them. It impacts humans a little bit differently. Do you think social media and fame of players and even in the enlarged pot for how much guys make have changed football a little bit differently for the better, in the sense of, for the most part, there are not as many mail-it-in guys. Maybe I'm naive, or maybe I haven't thought about this that much in the NFL. Like, there are some guys that get by that are kind of lazy, but for the most part,
you're seeing they mail it in less now because of the attention?
Like they're already kind of rich. You're already kind of famous when you become a good player. The endorsement money off the field has probably never been higher. You can make money through social media now so easily.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not like back in the day it was like you got paid. It was a really big deal. I'm not saying it's not still a big deal, but like Patrick Mahomes, he was already on several major campaigns. Like, wouldn't you? And he was the 10th overall pick. Like, he was a multi-millionaire, right? He's a bad example, but
maybe there's something to, once you've made enough money where you could quit, but you keep playing. The only reason to keep playing is because you love it. Like Walter White, just loves making meth. I mean, he made enough money.
But wasn't he trying to survive?
But then he made more than he needed to survive. He's just in the game. Just loves the game. You
get deep into
the game.
Yeah, it's hard to get out. They say once you get in, there's no getting out, right?
The other, you just made me think of this, not related to what you just said, but what you were saying previously is I wonder if there's any part of, like, in theory, because of the practice time, teams whose coaches know exactly what to do with their players should have a slight advantage. Maybe the Niners structure where Kyle doesn't he's not demanding every draft pick be his draft pick. But I do wonder if there is something to, like, Brandon Ayuk is not some guy the GM loved and drafted, and now the head coach who doesn't have player personnel control has to coach him, right? Like, there is zero chance Brandon Ayuk gets drafted if Kyle Shanahan doesn't love him. It's not to say that other GMs are drafting offensive players their coaches hate, but you just eliminate that little piece of bureaucracy in your NFL organization in terms of streamlining. The only players that are on the field, we know this, are players that the coach wanted to draft. Now, it's not saying he was the number one guy that wanted to draft Javon Kinlaw. He might have been relying on Robert Saleh, or so Adam Peters maybe was the guy that's, But the point is, like, we know the only players that get onto the field are the guys that Kyle Shanahan wants to get on the field.
Yeah,
on has 3 and out plan for.
On 3 and out, I did the 5 teams most suited to handle this weird Corona training camp. I didn't necessarily put the Niners there just because I gave Bill Belichick their spot, but I easily could have. It was Doug, Howie, it was Pete Carroll, John Schneider, Veach, Andy, John Harbaugh, DaCosta. These people that have worked together for a decade, 2 decades plus, have a huge advantage during this time because there's none of that, like Gettleman, Joe Judge, even like Ron Rivera and the Redskins, McCarthy, Jerry Jones. They've never worked together from a football standpoint where I want to keep this guy on my roster, you want to keep this guy on our roster, who do we do? That's those guys have been through that countless times. Their plan going into this, like, they can put together a plan with understanding how the result's going to play out, kind of, right? If this happens, we'll do this.
They just have a clear vision for why they're doing what they're doing. Yeah, there's an alignment.
And I think there's a huge part of every guy on the roster being there on your watch together.
Yeah.
The GM, head coach together.
Right. Yep. That's
and
true.
That's for any team, even like Steve Keim, we'll get into the NFC West, like Steve Keim, Cliff Kingsbury. To me, it's like, are they on the same page in a situation like this? And I don't blame people for not. This is a complicated situation. Zimmer and Rick Spielman, they've worked together now, 6-7 years? Like, they're going to have a pretty big advantage. Just because it's going to be hard, right? It's going to be difficult. Like, do I keep the 7th-year guy or my 5th-round pick? Well, when you've been around the 7th-year guy, I don't know, for the last 6 years together, it's pretty easy to have a determination, right?